episode 183 of the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. I go solo again. In this episode, I'm going to teach you how you can go from a peer to a superior. That's right, folks. It's for you folks who've been promoted ahead of your peers and now are in charge of them. Are you ready for this? All right, let's do it. Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the three domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show. Hey, yes, it is your Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy. Thanks for coming out to another episode of the podcast. It's so great to have you here. And you know what? It's so great to be solo behind the mic yet again this month. Something new recently, not something new completely, but I'm trying to bring you guys, you leaders out there, a solo episode every month because I love just talking about leadership and more importantly, directly going after the issues, the questions, the concerns, the thoughts that you all have out there. And this one has been popping up in our leadership group on Facebook, Leadership Skills for Managers Who Want to Be Leaders, Not Bosses. You can find that at movingforwardleadership.com/group. All right. If you want to join, you're not a member there, please come by right now at the recording of this episode. We got like 4,200 leaders in there, and we're talking about leadership issues such as this one every day. Now, before I dive into the content of today's lesson or episode, I should say, I got a major announcement. I have a major announcement, and that is something which has been discussed. You listeners and members of the Facebook community are asking for it. It is coming. It is coming, ladies and gentlemen, and that is our Leader Growth Mastermind. This is going to be a 8-week program we're going to kick off for you leaders out there who want to level up your leadership skills and leadership abilities. We're going to have weekly Zoom calls. We're going to have accountability built into the group. We're going to go deep dive into some key leadership areas. We're going to enable you to unlock the potential that's in you right now. So if this is of interest to you, it is time to act now. I am building the content and the program right now as I record this episode. And then mid-September, I'm going to open up registration. So in about 2 weeks from now, I'm going to open up registration. We're only going to take a handful of people. We're going to keep the group small. So if this is of something interest to you, you want to jump on the mailing list specific to the Leader Growth Mastermind. And that is if you go to movingforwardleadership.com/leader-growth. And that's movingforwardleadership.com/leader-growth. That's going to bring you to a page where you can simply fill out the form and get your email put onto the email list. And when we go live with registration, I'll let you know first. I'm so excited. I can't wait to bring this to you. It's going to be great. Can't wait to interact with you face to face in this program. That is it. All right. So let's set the stage, shall we? And I'm going to be open and transparent. I am in this boat that we're talking about today. This has recently happened to me this past summer. And that means I was a peer, and then I've been promoted, and now I am a superior. to people who were my peers before. All right. So it can be uncomfortable. It can be a bit challenging, but we're going to help you get around that. So the first thing that you need to think about when you're in this situation is, are you going through some imposter syndrome? A lot of people, when they get picked for positions, they get promoted, they kind of go through a bit of imposter syndrome. Wow, why me? There's so many other great people out there. I'm not experienced enough. I don't know enough, et cetera, et cetera. All these negative thoughts around there. And if you find that you are going through imposter syndrome, remember, the organization picked you. You didn't necessarily pick yourself for the job. Yes, you applied for it, right? But the organization picked you. Someone outside, other than you, decided that you were the right fit for that role. You have the skill set needed to fulfill that role. You can do this role. Okay? This should help with your imposter syndrome. Now, that being said, I do have a great episode, and that is episode 162 with Chris Kelso, where we go deep into imposter syndrome and, most importantly, how to get away from imposter syndrome. So you can check that out at movingforwardleadership.com/162. And that link, as well as the link for the Leader Growth Mastermind, will be in the show notes for you. But the moral of the story is this, is that, imposter syndrome is common. It happens to all of us, happens to myself. But remember that you applied for the job, but the company is the one that picked you. So they believe in you. All right. So what happens, though, if you believe you lack training and clarity for the role that you've been promoted into? This is where you need to be open and transparent with your supervisor that you lack some skills. And together, develop an action plan for yourself. And you can even do this before you go in and meet with your supervisor, right? You can self-identify some gaps that you have that you need to be brought up to speed on, that you need a little bit extra training. Maybe it is in accounting. Maybe it's in business planning, budgeting, etc. Maybe it's in leadership skills. But regardless of the skill that you find that you're lacking, developing a plan, bringing it forward is the best way forward. Okay? So do your research, do your homework, do your check. Think about what it is that you feel that you're missing. Then do the research. Okay, how can I fill this gap? What courses are available out there? What resources are available out there? What are the costs of them? What are the time commitments? And build the action plan and present that to your supervisor. Are they going to go for it all in? Probably not. Absolutely not. But at least you're thinking about it, and together you can work with them for something that works for, not just for you, but your supervisor as well. And that will enable you to get those skills. But we're not here to talk about just you and your supervisor, but more importantly, how do you make that transition from being a peer to being now a supervisor? And there's two different scenarios, right? So often you may be a peer, i.e. you've been promoted from within the company. Or maybe you're someone completely new and you've just been promoted, but into a new company. So you may not be a known entity. Okay, we're going to go a little bit into both of these, but let's go with the one that is most common, i.e. you're part of the company and you've been promoted within the company. And this is exactly what happened with me recently. So one of the things that you need to do right away is show to your people that you have not changed, nor should you. Your core values shouldn't change. Your beliefs shouldn't change. The way you approach people shouldn't change. Just because you're now a supervisor, leader of this organization, this team, this section, whatever, those types of things should not change. And if they do, you need to have a really good deep look within yourself. So when I started in my new role, there's someone who works directly for me who I've known for 15 years now. I would even tell you that this person is a friend of mine. We've been out and had drinks together and talked and social and et cetera, et cetera. But now I'm their direct supervisor. So when I first got in the role and they showed up, I had a meeting with them face to face, closed the door, and I said, all right, let's have the awkward conversation. And that is, listen, I am still Scott. I am still the same guy. I am just now your supervisor. Our relationship, yes, it's changed a bit, but it doesn't ultimately have to change per se. I have my job, you have your job. Ultimately, I'm providing guidance and direction for you to achieve your job and your goals and your aims. I am here to support you. And when I had that conversation, I tell you, I could see the instant relief in them. Everything just relaxed. Why? Because I provided a sense of psychological safety that I am not out for heads here. I'm not going to change. I'm now a known entity, etc., etc. This person now felt safe knowing that not everything has changed. Just a little bit has changed. So what I suggest to you is if you know some of your new directs for quite some time, years, have that conversation with them. And most importantly, establish some boundaries like I did. I told them, I said, listen, we're in the military, so there is a rank thing. I have a higher rank than they do. So I say, listen, when we're in public, let's play the game. Yes, sir. No, sir. 3 bag full, sir. When you reply to emails to me, which are most likely going to go outside from both of us, please do the sir thing, etc. But when it's just you, me, we're in this office, it's a message back and forth. I don't need to have all this yes, sir, no, sir stuff. I know that you respect me. I know that you are going to follow my direction. I don't need all these formalities, okay? We can still have an adult conversation, and that goes a long way with your people. So make sure that you do that. Make sure that you have these conversations with people who are, basically people you've known for a long time. And make sure you have boundaries from within work and then boundaries out of work. So if you know these people out of work and you're friends with them, you can still have that friendship relationship. You just need to set a boundary around it. So when you're out and you guys are enjoying each other's company, just set a boundary. Say, we will not talk work when we're outside of work. We will not have any conversations. And when we're at work, we won't talk about our social life. We'll avoid it. Those could be a couple of boundaries. Now, the risk of that is people may say, well, you're now choosing favorites. And that's a viable risk. That can totally happen in that people perceive you as picking one of your now subordinates who is a friend of yours as a favorite. And you just have to balance that. And the way I suggest balancing it is through your actions, making sure the others feel like they're getting ample opportunities to prove themselves for overtime, to take on projects, for professional development, whatever the sticking point is. Just make sure that keep to the moral high ground and that the opportunities are given to everyone appropriately. I'm not going to say equally, but appropriately, right? You can't necessarily just go 1, 1, 1, 1. It doesn't work like that. It has to be done appropriately based off of some kind of analysis, needs analysis, and availability, all those different factors. Okay? So, moral of the story, with friends who were once your peer and now you're their supervisor, is remind them you are the same person, but remind them of the boundaries both in and outside of work. And then finally, the expectations. How do you expect them to operate? How do you expect them to report to you, get back to you? Just like you would with any other subordinate. Just set these expectations, okay? Now, let's talk about peers that you may not know for quite some time, or a common theme, which is peers in your organization who also applied for that job that you now have. You have to validate them, right, as your subordinates. And the best way to validate them is ask them for their input and understand their role. Ask them to fully explain to them the role. And you may not pick up on everything as their peer, as what you do now as their supervisor. So this is a great time to really go in depth and have an understanding of what they do, how they fit into an organization, what their deliverables are, what their pain points are, etc. You really want to get a good understanding of their role so that you can look at them and say, okay, I would like your input, and then how you can take their input and implement. You need to have an understanding of how they can help you, right? And you can help them. So with this, you want to make sure that you validate them and, listen to what they thought about how the team should be run. They competed for that position as well. They have some ideas, some insights, some type of vision for that team or organization. Well, give them an opportunity to tell you. You may not have thought it all. Yes, you're the one with the job, but you don't have all the answers. In fact, I always say, us as leaders, we don't have the answers. We're the ones with the questions. So ask the question and go, hey, what was your vision for this job anyway? And listen to them and take notes. Now, does that mean you have to take and implement everything that they say? Heck no. But at least you're giving them validation by asking the question and listening to them and not cutting them off and taking notes, showing them that you're genuinely interested in their thoughts. So make sure that you get to know what they thought. And that's going to enable them to ease the burden of that, I applied for this job, never got this job, and actually feel included with the team still and include it within your thought process and show them that, yeah, you may not get picked for this position, but you're still a valuable team member here. I still value what you have. I still value you. I still believe in what you think. All right. And who knows? Maybe the next time a role like this one pops up, you're next in line. Or how can we polish you to get to be the next in line? Okay, maybe that's doing some actings while I'm away. Maybe that is getting some new qualifications. Maybe that's simply, it's just a matter of time, but keep doing what you're doing and we'll get there. Okay? But basically validating them and who they are, where they come from, and reason why you believe in them will go a long way. Another thing which often pops up in this transition period is both respect and trust. Now, those are two completely different topics, but I would suggest to you that you go about earning them in the same way. You cannot basically take respect and trust. You have to earn them. And remember, regardless that you are a peer and now you've simply changed jobs to become a supervisor, you're still new to them. They're not going to know how you operate, right? Go back to my story there with my friend who is now my subordinate. That person didn't know how I was going to be as their boss because I've never been their boss before. They don't know how I operate as a supervisor. This is the first time ever for this, right? So I needed to earn their trust as their supervisor, as their respect as their supervisor as well. So you are quote unquote new to them. So therefore, you have to earn both trust and respect through actions. by doing things which support them, by showing them that you are trustworthy, by showing them that you take care of them, that you deserve their respect. This is how you're going to earn their respect and trust. Now, that being said, do you allow people to be disrespectful? Do you allow people to be not trustworthy in your organization? It depends on your organization's values, but I would suggest probably not. So with that being said, you cannot condone subordinates who are disrespectful, who are not trustworthy within your organization. You have to deal with that right then, right away. But end of the day, you may not have the respect and trust of your subordinates immediately, especially if some of them are basically bitter over the fact that you got the role and not them. It's going to take a lot of time. But what I would tell you is if these people act out, have a conversation with them one-on-one and remind them what I told you at the beginning, is that you didn't pick yourself for this job. The organization did. Therefore, they're lashing out at the wrong person. You're there to help them. And if they really want this role bad enough, then you will set them up for success the next time that they apply for that role or a similar one. But if they continue to act like this, it's not going to be possible. You have to nip that in the bud right away. Okay, ladies and gentlemen? And when all boils down, remember this. When we're taking on people's advice, input, any suggestions, you don't have to follow it. End of the day, you are the leader. You are the supervisor for that organization. You've been picked. But the simple fact of asking for it definitely goes a long way. So let's have a quick recap, shall we? Remember, if you're imposter syndrome, you didn't pick yourself. The organization picked you, therefore they believe in you. And if you have imposter syndrome, or you think you do, check out episode 162. Again, that's at movingforwardleadership.com/162 or in the show notes for this episode. Remember to speak to your supervisor to basically get clarity and develop an action plan for yourself for any gaps that you feel like you're missing. Okay? And be open and transparent with them. When you're meeting with your friend who is now a subordinate of yours, break that whole awkwardness right away. Set some boundaries. Set expectations. Meeting with your people, make sure that you validate them and that you listen to them, but ultimately understand you do not have to do everything that they said. And the final thing is always that you have to know respect and trust are always earned, never taken. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is this week's episode on how you go from peer to superior. Remember, as always, lead, don't boss. Take care, have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that. Help me, help a friend, win-win all around. And hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss, and thanks for coming out. Take care now.